Since the Gen 9 OU metagame is in a bit of an unstable state, one of the OU council members, NJNP, has suggested something drastic. NJNP wants to ban up to 10 Pokemon immediately, and then perform something called the Kokoloko Method, where each of the banned Pokemon is individually tested in the format one by one. I'm joined actually by NJNP today. It's great to have a member of the OU council on the channel. Thank you for coming.
Of course, yeah. I mean, thank you so much for having me. I want the Coco method to really be a way to potentially change the OU tier in a positive way. A lot of people are enjoying the tier, a lot of people are enjoying the new Pokemon, and I'm really not trying to hinder their enjoyment. I'm really just looking at the overall health of the tier and wanting to see it improve. I know, a lot of people are opposed to banning Pokemon unless it's something extremely egregious like a Ursula Bloodmoon. We don't have anything that's overly egregious, but we certainly have too many Pokemon. Like we have too many viable Pokemon. Like you go into the builder, it simply is not practical to be able to cover every single threat in the tier. In this post, I list Deoxys Speed, Gouging Fire, Superior, Kyurem, Roaring Moon, Volcarona, Enamorus, Raging Bolt, King Gambit, Gholdengo, and Iron Boulder, as these were mons that were likely going to be potentially included in the survey that we released today. And even on this list, it's missing mons that are being amazing and pressuring the tier heavily in Darkrai and Masquerada, with the new move it gained in Triple Axle, applying amazing pressure and being a big staple to balance cores currently. We just have so many potent Pokemon that are currently just being such threats and applying so much pressure to the tier. Like you can build a team and you can be good for rain cores and you could be good for Kyurem with Veil cores, but then you're weak to Bascarata Rain. You're weak to Deoxys Speed Lead. You may prep for Deoxys Speed Lead, but then you end up being weak to Deoxys Speed Life Orb. Or you may prep for Gouging Fire, but then you're weak to Roaring Moon Volcarona. It's so many things that are applying such pressure to the tier, and of course we have elements like Terra still here as well. It's just not practical to be able to prep for everything in the tier currently. So that's why I suggested the controversial tiering way of the Kokoloko method, because I feel like if we're able to remove a good amount of tier and basically kind of do a start from scratch again, like, just kind of a reset in a way, remove a decent amount of the immensely pressuring Pokemon. Of course, the player base would get a say in what we feel like we need to remove, and then we bring them down one by one and go from there. I completely understand people being opposed to the method and feeling like it's too drastic and feeling like we're in a fine state now and we just need to see positive growth from the tier where we're standing right now, give it some time for the tier to develop. I completely understand where they're coming from, and honestly I wasn't expecting to immediately be accepted in my stance.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think it's definitely a good thing that you're suggesting something different, because the method of just suspecting stuff one by one has been a bit slow, maybe not fitting for this metagame. It's cool to at least think of different ways that tiering could be done. My personal opinion on this is that I guess I'm a bit 50-50. I think an issue with the early metagame, when the game first came out, was that there were so many threats that I remember saying, in the very early metagame, that a Pokemon like Chien Pao felt fine to me, because there were so many other broken threats, more broken threats, that they were totally stealing the spotlight away from things like Chien Pao or Espathra that would later get banned. So it's a bit hard to evaluate individual broken threats in a vacuum when there's such a high quantity of actual powerful game-ending threats. So we might have another situation where maybe we ban Gouging Fire or something, and then the new thing is broken, and it's just a really long process of okay, we know all these things are broken, but it just takes ages to actually get to each one of them.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. I mean, as I'm saying earlier, we're just in a situation where, when you're going into the builder, you're just even in standard gameplay, and you're trying to prep for potentially so many different outcomes, so many different sets. When I go into the team builder, I'm trying to simply, of course, build the best team possible, but understanding that I'm going to be weak to certain things. That's the thing. That's one of the things that's been pitched about Terra is okay, well, Terra is able to solve certain weaknesses that a team may have. But what I feel like what a lot of people use Terra in the builder as a fallback, when reality is in most gameplay, you are trying to keep your Terra as long as you possibly can. It's literally like you gotta kind of like treat it like it's your seventh Pokemon. Like Terra is like it's one of your most valuable things. You cannot just simply burn it, because when you simply just burn it, the game gets much easier, generally speaking, for your opponent, as they have a lot less to worry about. They don't have to worry about your King Gambit turning into a flying type on their Great Tusk. The game gets much easier for your opponent, and so you're trying to prep for so many different things. We have things like, for example, Volcarona. Is a very popular Terra user, and with water, dragon, ground, so many different variants of how it's able to abuse it. And so Terra's burned. Okay, you're like, all right, good. I'm in a good position in the battle, all right? But then you have to deal with a Raging Bolt that's got a special attack booster that's Calm Minding, and then Thunderclapping as you try to revenge it with its fantastic bulk. In my opinion, if you don't have a Dinglu or a Clodsire, what Raging Bolt is able to pull off in certain situations, especially with Terra and just even with its bulk in general, it's not an easy Pokemon to simply revenge with a physical attack, and that's generally speaking going to be how you're going to revenge it with. We have a good amount of ground attacking units. Like, the meta is revolved around Pokemon like Gliscor. Gliscor, reality is, does not really want to switch into a Raging Bolt. I mean, that Draco Meteor I've even seen just straight up OH kill some Gliscor spreads. It's just, we have so many different ones. We even got the bridge, I believe it's Archelodon. The fact that what it's able to do in rain, how it's able to boost its special attack, and with a stamina get its defense boosted when you try to revenge it, and then it's body pressing Pokemon that you thought would be safe. We have so many different things. Like, you can have a fantastic built together team. You can prepare for Iron Boulder, King Gambit, Volcarona, Kyurem, and then you lose to the bridge. It's like, you can do so much. You can prep for so much. It's not easy right now.
I did read Finchinator's post, and I think he is opposed to this tiering method, and something he said that I think I agree with is that the upcoming SBL shouldn't be like too much of a deciding factor on taking drastic action, in my opinion. I actually think that we now have the liberty to take our time a bit more, because there's not going to be much new content on the horizon. In the past, it's been kind of annoying to make drastic tiering decisions because there's going to just be metagame resets with like Pokemon Home DLC and stuff. Now all the DLC's out. I don't know if there's like more planned in the future, but probably not for a while. It'll just be minor, maybe like a new Pokemon here and there or something. So we're kind of like done with all that now. So the metagame is in a fairly stable state in terms of like there's not going to be significant metagame shakeups in the future anymore. So I think that even though it would suck for the SBL players to have a shifting metagame, I think it would be a shame to take such drastic tiering action like this right now, when actually that's not what we should do.
I mean, I completely understand, and I was making sure to, I know I mentioned SBL on my post and brought up to be a head point, but I was also making sure to also say in my post that I don't want people to think that this is being done for SBL, kind of like how, we quick banned Volcarona, which, was a controversial ban. A lot of people didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. Removing that from the tier to make sure that we had a good tier and a balanced tier heading forward to SBL. I mean, the fact of the matter is SBL has, generally speaking, some of the best players in the community, and really signifies the dedicated player base that plays OU is going to be, generally speaking, in SBL. Like, the loudest voices in the community are, generally speaking, going to be in SBL. So you try to make the best tier for those players to play, because also we're able to see the highest level of play, generally speaking, in the OU tier in SBL. So we're able to see what Pokemon are too much for the tier. And so I understand, wanting to, for example, not go the Coco way and see what, SBL has to give us, see what certain things stand out in the tier. We may head into SBL thinking, as we have like Volcarona, things like Volcarona and Iron Boulder are potentially a lot for the tier. And then we come away 5 weeks or 4 weeks in thinking, okay, maybe we were overreacting. And maybe things like Pyram, Stellar and Amorous, with Scarf, those are the real troublemakers. I completely understand not wanting to rush things for SBL. I mean, I'm okay with that. And as I was saying in my post, like, I'm really looking at the general scope, of the tier itself, and it's just SBL coming up, and OST, of course, is another major tournament coming up. I just want us to have potentially the best tier possible in general, just in general for all players, not just tournament players, but for all ladder players. And I just feel like this was a method certainly to be considered, and to get feedback from the community on how they would feel about that.
I think it's good to get community engagement on it too. If it's something everyone wants, we can do it. I think you guys are doing a great job in terms of community engagement this time around. A lot of the decisions have been informed by these surveys, which I think is a great way to do it.
Yeah, man, we love the community. I mean, as you know, like, this is all for the love of the game. No one's receiving any type of check for doing this. Like, we're really just trying to make sure that we provide the best thing for the community, and trying going to give the best metagame for the community. So this is just a proposal. This is just something for people to talk about and discuss. And, I hope people, read the post, and I really appreciate all the positive feedback. I feel like this thread has been a massive success as far as I'm concerned, even if everyone's not in agreement with me. Just the fact that we've had, I would say, some really quality discussion, some of the best quality discussion that I've seen. Because usually things like Terra or mods like Gholdengo and King it kind of gets bogged down and it starts getting like into ridiculous arguments that takes away from the true, like, we're really just trying to discuss mons here.
I think before we started recording, you were talking about the survey. Did you say that there was a lot of support for Gholdengo this time? Is that something we can reveal preemptively?
Yeah, no, I mean, Gholdengo's receiving a lot of support. Of course, we have to go through the data and see how it looks on the qualified side of things. But it's been receiving tons of support for the past 2 surveys. And I would say that the main reason why it wasn't suspected before the end of DLC 2, well, 2 reasons. One being that just mods overshadow it, like Gliscor and Roaring Moon. And second, we were just simply coming down to the end of DLC 1. And the big thing wasn't why it was discussed. It was brought up. There was discussions had. It's like, okay, are we doing a disservice to the community, or are we doing a disservice to the player base who wants Gholdengo to be banned if we go about suspecting Gholdengo and we have it for like a week or 2? The suspect ends. Gholdengo, let's say Gholdengo's banned. Fact of the matter is, and the reality is, when DLC 2 comes out, there's going to be a vote. The council is going to 100% unban it because the council has not found Gholdengo. The majority of us have not found Gholdengo to be a problematic member in the OU community. So it would have been unbanned. And then you simply would have just had people who would have felt like they wasted their time. Now we're in DLC 2. Gholdengo is receiving tremendous support to be looked at once again by the community. Now, whatever result that has happened, it can stick around for a while. It can stick around for a while, potentially, if it's, for example, to be erased from the OU tier.
I feel like you could make the same argument about Gliscor. Gliscor was suspected right before DLC 2, got banned pretty much immediately, got unbanned once DLC 2 came out. I think the difference is that on the survey, Gliscor and Roaring Moon had way more support from qualified players than Gholdengo did. That's probably the main thing.
Yeah. And the thing with Gliscor, so with Gliscor is, I think it was like a month and a half or like a month before DLC. So like it was a decent amount of time where with its removal, there was a good amount of tournament games that were still able to be played without it. And ladder play overall, like the player base was able to enjoy its presence away from the tier a decent amount as compared to Gholdengo, which would have been like probably only a week at best.
I would say that for me personally, Gholdengo is the Pokemon having the largest impact on the metagame in terms of skewing it towards hazard stacking. I would say removing Gholdengo from the metagame would be a net positive. You mentioned that the council doesn't mind Gholdengo.
Yeah, I mean, if the community voices their support for something, we certainly aren't going to stand in their way. So, we're going to see what the survey results bring. Gholdengo has a strong 4 around that region, and it most likely is going to get a suspect. I mean, I think we're all really expecting for it to, let me not speak for everyone. I'm basically expecting it to be suspect. I would be pretty surprised if it doesn't receive the support, to get a suspect. Personally, I don't feel like its removal from the tier will be the most extreme net positive in regards to hazards. My whole thing with Gholdengo, because I personally have had an issue with the Pokemon myself from day 1, but I try to remove my personal grievances from mons when voting and try to view things objectively. So my thing with Gholdengo, I feel like if you want to make the case for it being too much for the tier, I feel like it's better to view it from being too much from the tier, from how it is able to it pressures balances, for example, too much. Now, I will say balances have things a little easier with mons like Volcarona coming back. But even then, like right now, the way that the tier is set up, like Volcarona isn't in the raise position. But what Gholdengo is able to do to balance structures is truly remarkable. And especially with Terra, of course, helping it out. There's a lot of balanced structures that you can play the best game possible, and you simply just fold to your opponent having the right Gholdengo with the right Terra, or it being attached to an air balloon and avoiding hazards for a good majority of the game while still pressuring. Right now, one of the most popular structures is Tinglu and Skarmory. Skarmories, of course, only are running body press for things like King Gambit. They can't touch ghosts. So there's a lot of instances where you can set up full hazard stack. You're facing a Tinglu itself, and it's continuously getting chipped over and over by hazards, taking that good 20% every single time it comes in, and then it has to take another 20% from a Make It Rain terrain, of course, if you predict it. So the Tinglu has already lost 40% every single time it's coming in. And you are getting a very safe pivot. You're avoiding T-spikes, of course, due to the air balloon. You're coming on Skarmy, etc. And you're just continuously like pressuring the opponent over and over again. Now, you lose your air balloon through the course of the game. And then you're able to Terra, recover on something, and then you're able to continuously like put yourself in a position to basically either sweep your opponent or they lose so many Pokemon to the point where they're unable to stand a chance for you throughout the remainder of the match. Personally, I feel like Gholdengo is, if you want to reach for its ban, it's more so for how it can be very uncompetitive in games for stall players and balanced players rather than hazards. Because I personally feel like the reality is if you remove Gholdengo from the tier, it really is only going to help one defogger in particular in Corviknight. Now, of course, there are other options like, Mandibuzz, but the viability of these Pokemon and them actually being good and actually you seeing yourself in a long-term match, being able to continuously remove hazards. Like we don't have a Lando T, we don't have a Moltres, like we don't have these things anymore having default. The reality of you like removing hazards long-term, and my thing is like, even if, we remove Gholdengo, hazard stack structures will just change. And with Gholdengo out the tier, honestly, hyper offensive teams, like some teams don't enjoy facing it. Like for example, Valiant is going to have a blast without Gholdengo in the tier. Valiant's able to then adjust this and start running taunt a lot easier. So you go to your Corviknight, you think you got a default, no, it's just going to get taunted by Valiant. There's a lot of prominent taunters right now in the tier. You got Deoxys Speed, Deoxys Defense. Of course, I bought up Iron Valiant. You got Greninja. Great Tusk even learns taunt. Gliscor can taunt it. Wide sets up spikes. So just because Golden goes in the tier, I understand, of course, yeah, Hazardous is a problem, but I don't think removing it from the tier is really going to give this breath of fresh air and solve our hazard problem immediately. Of course, removing a prominent ghost, I'm sure will maybe have some positive effect, but I don't think it's as great as people have made it out to be realistically.
That's a detailed answer. I think I agree mostly. I don't think it's going to single-handedly solve all the issues surrounding hazards if you ban Gholdengo. Ceaseless Edge is obviously still just an inherently powerful concept, like attacking and spiking up at the same time. But I think there's no single Pokemon that's having such a wide metagame impact as Gholdengo is in terms of restricting moves like taunt and random status moves, as you said, and enabling hazards. If you remove Gholdengo, it's probably the single most meta impactful ban. All the other bans would just be, individual threats that are powerful, but then something else will take their place. But banning Gholdengo would change the whole identity of the format, I think. Probably.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And it would probably be a step in the right direction, in my opinion, even if it doesn't completely solve the issue.
If Gholdengo gets banned, a lot of bans are gonna follow right after. A lot of Pokemon probably gotta go if Gholdengo goes. I would be surprised if Iron Boulder can stick around. I'd be surprised if Iron Valiant can stick around. I'd be surprised if Kyurem can stick around. Gholdengo right now, kind of holds a lot together. And so, if it goes, I feel like it would personally be a domino effect. But we'd have to find out and see. It would be a very big deal for sure. It would probably be the biggest, impactful ban as far as completely changing the identity of the SVOU tier that we've had.
Something else I've thought about. I think National Dex banned Light Clay. And some formats have banned Light Clay. Is that something you guys have considered? Because hazard stacking and Raw Reveal and now Deoxys Speed, screen stacking, are kind of a huge problem in enabling offensive strategies and making them a little bit uninteractive.
Yeah, it's something that's definitely come up. And generally speaking, our thought process is to remove the most problematic element from the tier before looking at something like Light Clay, as it's a lot harder to justify or removing policy-wise. So, for example, when Magearna was around the tier, a lot of people were like, oh, we need to remove Light Clay. Light Clay is too much for the tier. But as soon as Magearna was removed, Light Clay seemed to be ceased to be extremely problematic. And when Excalibur was in the tier and we got Ninetales introduced to us, people were calling for, Light Clay or Ninetales to be suspected or looked at. But as soon as we remove Excalibur for the tier, overall has seemed to be an okay playstyle. Certainly it's not something that's being considered right now because offense is in a really interesting position right now. And that's why some people have an issue with the tier right now. Balance, as far as especially on high ladder, is hands down right now the most consistent and best playstyle. Probably right now the worst place that hyper offense has been in, and usually hyper offense has been at the leading head of SVOU with things like of Shetel and as you brought up, Veil and Screens being very defining moments throughout the tier. And of course things like Gholdengo helping methods like Sticky Web. OU's in a really interesting place right now, and so is HO. And so generally speaking, most players have found themselves, topping ladder with balanced archetypes. Not to say that you can't do it at hyper offense, because it certainly has been done, but hyper offense has a lot to contend with, a lot of threats and a lot of bulky Pokemon that higher offensive teams just find a hard time to deal with. Even certain mons like, for example, Scarf and Amorous finding new life with Stellar, making it, not resist anything, just firing off Terra Blast attacks with ease and getting boosts. So there's a lot going on right now.
Well, thank you for coming on. I think that's probably all I had to ask about this, and I wish you good luck in how you handle the format going forward. It's been a roller coaster, evidently very difficult to agree on what to do. And I think, even though this is a drastic thing, at least it's sparking discussion, at least it's a new way to think about the tier. And the idea of potentially individually testing all these Pokemon is making people think about each of them in a vacuum, which is useful. So I appreciate that. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I just want to thank you, man, so much for having me on the channel. You're doing amazing, great things, and it's an honor to be here. And hopefully you invite me back, and hopefully I didn't talk your head off too much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
KO'd by one hit! It scattered spikes!
The money got different, cause of what I'm spending.